big news since we last spoke that broke was Trent Alexander-Arnold to Real Madrid. The rumours really ramped up now. Obviously, they've been in the background for a long, long time, but the reports that Real Madrid made an official approach, Liverpool rejected that. First of all, as a general overview of it, where is that? What do you make of that piece of news that broke?
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. I think it's been all up to this point. I guess we've kind of been able to dismiss a lot of this as kind of speculation. So, for example, a few days ago, when the story breaks in Marca about the real interest in Trent, they're ready to ramp it up. You can kind of say, okay, well, that's a typical tactic of the Spanish media. They do try and unsettle players, and they will always report things with a Real Madrid slant. So it was easy to kind of dismiss that. Then, of course, when the news comes that a bid has actually gone in, things just get a lot more serious, really. And I guess it's at the point now where, it's kind of decision time for the player, really, for me, because I think what's clear is that he hasn't completely told Real Madrid to go. It's obviously something is going on there in the background. He hasn't shut that down completely. And if that's the case, clearly Real Madrid's taking that as encouragement. But that's the big question now, is basically, obviously for Liverpool, I think it's really, really simple in terms of a bid for January. I think they don't want to accept it. They've no intention, even if the money gets up now, of accepting it. There's no benefit to them when they are chasing trophies. But for Trent, it's getting to the point now where you have to decide really whether you are going to go down that route of going in at the end of the season or not, or whether, you want this churning along in the background. I think, these contract negotiations have been going on with Liverpool, and by my understanding, he has been given priority to Liverpool. This isn't something that's kind of been cooked up alongside Real Madrid, but equally it suggests he hasn't told them no, and he hasn't told them that's not something he's considering. And I just think it's reaching a point where, as I say, he probably has to make a decision now on what he's going to do, even if that is to tell Liverpool the bad news, so to speak, that he's going to go to Real Madrid, because I just think this is something you don't want going on in the background while Liverpool are doing so well at the moment. It can, it is getting to the point where it's going to derail things. And I know he spoke about, wanting it to be done quietly and in the background and not be played out in public. But he now doesn't have that choice, because Real Madrid have taken it public. And I guess from their point of view, it's kind of a stance of, we put in a bid now. It does almost force Trent's hand and trying to force him in, kind of forces him into making a decision. So for me, I think Liverpool should probably be putting similar pressure on him, because it's just too big of a story to keep in the background now. And it's something that you do worry about the effect that will have on the squad and Trent himself in terms of Liverpool's aims for this season.
And so do you think Trent's still keeping his options open then? He hasn't decided one way or the other. Obviously, I think with that Real Madrid news coming in, I agree that pretty much shows he hasn't told them no. So he hasn't made a decision. Definitely staying at Liverpool and 100% wants to stay at Liverpool. But also the flip side isn't quite true yet, that he hasn't told Liverpool that he's going to Real Madrid if that bid's coming in. And to be honest, that bid felt like it was a bit for show. I think it was 20 million, the figure being bandied about. Liverpool were never ever going to accept that. Real Madrid couldn't have thought that they would accept that. It needs to be, well, at least double before you even begin the conversation, I think, for a player of that quality, even with 6 months left on his contract. But in general, the situation is that Trent hasn't decided. It's not that he's decided in favour of Real Madrid, although that now looks closer than maybe ever after that news.
Yeah, to be honest, I've suspected for a while, and I think we've spoken about this previously, that he's kind of keeping his options open, and that it would have been foolish for him to dismiss Real Madrid out of hand at any point anyway, because I think ultimately, if he can't agree with Liverpool, he can't get the contract that he wants, it would always make sense to have Real Madrid there as a, if he definitely just wanted Liverpool, to have that there as a backup option is a pretty good backup option for you. But also to use it as a tool in negotiations. So, for example, if he came out and said, I don't want Real Madrid, then it does Liverpool's job for them. I mean, we've seen with Salah and Van Dijk, I've described that previously, as both of them really kind of weakening their negotiating position by saying that they only want to stay at Liverpool. It doesn't actually help them. So for Trent, it's kind of worthwhile leverage to keep it there. But I think the problem he's got now is, you probably can't keep that leverage there for much longer. Real Madrid are trying to force the issue. And they clearly just kind of want a decision from the player, whether that's to say to Liverpool, I'm going to go now, or I want to go now, even though Liverpool, in my opinion, would completely reject that, or whether it's to say, in the summer, I'm going to go to Real Madrid. So I think it just creates an urgency, which I guess is probably part of Real Madrid's tactic, really, And as I say, I just don't think he can probably keep that hanging there for much longer. I think he has to make a call about what he's going to get from Liverpool, what that looks like, and whether that is enough to keep him there, or if he wants to go down the route of Real Madrid. So I don't take it, I suppose, in summary, kind of don't take that as much a disastrous sign that Real Madrid are going this strong. To me, probably does show that he hasn't quite made a call, and he certainly hasn't dismissed that Real Madrid interest. But as I say, I think it does force him a little bit, and he probably does have to kind of inform Liverpool about what will get him there in terms of signing the contract, or, you know, if I can't get this, I'm definitely going to go, and be kind of, you know, very definitive on it like that.
What's the sticking point, do you think? Because we've heard him talk about what he wants from his career, which is legacy, essentially, trophies and legacy, and to win the Ballon d'Or and to be regarded as one of the best ever. You know, he could do both of those. And I know we've spoken about the Ballon d'Or point in the past, that he's more likely to win that at Liverpool than Real Madrid, because other players will win it at Real Madrid if Real Madrid do well. But in terms of, you know, legacy and being regarded as one of the best ever, you do get more of a profiling of Real Madrid, of course, but he's going to be a Liverpool legend if he stays there the whole time. But is it now? I mean, I get the sense, correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the sense Liverpool, in terms of contract length, would be happy to give him, you know, almost whatever he wants. You know, 5 years is not a risk with Trent Alexander-Arnold like it is with Van Dijk or Salah, for example. Is it just down to money then? Is it, you know, how much can Real Madrid offer him compared to Liverpool, or is there more to it than that?
I think it will be money with Liverpool. I'd say if he is to join Real Madrid, it won't be anything to do with money. It will be a decision made about lifestyle, taking on a new challenge, things like that. I don't think it's a decision based on money per se, but I think with that Real Madrid interest and the way he's been able to leverage it with Liverpool, it is a little bit about money. It's in terms of, you know, the sticking point it won't be contract length. It'll be, are you going to recognize me as the kind of key man in this side and give me a pay packet that reflects that, you know, closer to Mo Salah maybe, and kind of that real high end in terms of his weekly wage. I guess that is what he's aiming for, really. That will be the sticking point with Liverpool, is that there'll be a distance on what that valuation looks like, and that's why he's using Real Madrid for that. But as I say, I don't want to reduce this to saying it is a decision about money, because, as I say, and I've always felt this, if he goes to Real Madrid, it's not because they can pay him more. You know, he's still going to be wealthy beyond his wildest dreams. It's not about getting money there. It's about, you know, what can this do for me as an experience going over there, living in Spanish culture, trying out a new league. You know, yes, it will increase his profile and everything else that goes with it, but it is just an incredibly tempting prospect, isn't it? Very few players get the opportunity to play for Real Madrid, and, you know, an English player going over there would be an unbelievable experience. But I think the kind of trade-off is okay, how much can Liverpool show that they want me as a counter to that? And if they do that, I think it will get done. But it's a big if at the moment, and clearly the numbers aren't quite there, because he would have just signed by now. So yeah, it's a tough one, really. And I think Liverpool, if it does, you know, if it's helpful probably to Trent that this is out there now, in terms of also, as much as it hurries him up in terms of making a decision, it probably for Liverpool just piles a little bit more pressure on them as well, because they'll know it looks bad to lose him as well. So yeah, it's a tough situation, but one, it's only partly, I'd say, about money.
Yeah, and does he fall into that category of an exception? You know, Liverpool have been praised a lot, rightly so, for not really breaking their structure of what they pay players, except for the occasional ones. You know, Salah's paid a lot more than anyone else. Van Dijk, I think, is second, and then Trent is third in the terms of highest paid at Liverpool. Is he a player? You know, I think we are talking about a generational talent. I think we're talking about one of the best right backs. I know his defence has been criticised, often way too harshly, but we're talking about that sort of level of talent. So I don't think too many people would be upset if he goes and earns the same amount as Salah, because he's up there in the world-class sort of bracket. So is that something you feel Liverpool should be making that exception for, should be giving him enough? Because you get the feeling if he does get offered, I don't know, to pluck a figure out thin air, 300 grand a week, for example, you know, he'd probably maybe favour Liverpool a bit more, because it's a boyhood club. As you've said a few times, he's going to get the armband at some point, retire an absolute legend, can win the trophies that he wants to win at Liverpool, the way things are going at the moment. It feels like if Liverpool were to make that commitment and make that exception for him as an exceptional talent, then that would swing things back in that favour. Is that something you think they should be doing?
I think it's really tough. I think it's actually tougher than we maybe think, really. And because I guess the huge question for Liverpool is, how much value are you getting from a right back, even the best right back in the world? You know, with Mo Salah, for example, when they made him their highest paid player of all time, it was so obvious that there was value in it. You were getting, you know, you were signing for another 3 years. You were 3 years that were within his peak. He had an unbelievable record of goal scoring, and the likelihood was that that would continue. And he does the hardest thing to do in football over and over and over again. And then you look at Trent Alexander-Arnold, and yes, he's brilliant, and he can have moments of brilliance. He scores free kicks. His set piece delivery is fantastic. He can score goals from right back. He sets goals up. But his assist numbers are probably not what they used to be. You know, in the way that he's used, he's influential in terms of progressing the ball. But again, what are the numbers you kind of put on that? And they're probably not the same as someone who scores goals incredibly frequently. So, you know, this is the thing, and we know Liverpool will be calculating this using some of these, you know, possession models that they have for on-ball value and things like that. And these will all become part of it. But I think the key question is, how influential can a right back be on winning football matches? And Trent is right up there in terms of he's probably the most influential right back in world football in terms of helping you win games. But is that enough? Because he is still limited by his position on the pitch and what, you know, the amount of influence you can have from that position. And I would say under Arne Slot as well, you know, asked to play slightly more as a conventional right back this season as well. And he isn't, like I say, clocking up those assist numbers that he used to alongside that. So I think it's a tougher kind of question to ask, really. And one, I'd be kind of fascinated to see where Liverpool are up to in terms of where they value that numbers wise and where Trent is and what that gap kind of looks like. But I think it's not a straightforward one. And it's really tricky to see how they kind of address that and whether there is a figure whereby they just say, do you know what, it's not for us. Maybe he should go to Real Madrid. I mean, they'll get absolute pelters if that happens. But I think it's a conversation that will at least be being had behind closed doors. You know, how much can a right back actually be worth to your team in the end?
Yeah, I was going to say, as a fan, you think, you know, losing a player of that quality is a huge hit. But I think there's extra frustration that it's going to be for free, because you're not just losing the player, you're losing, you know, if you sell him at his peak, you may be talking near £100 million player. So you're losing that potential transfer fee as well.
Yeah, and one thing I kind of interesting about this to me actually as well is that Trent signed a 4-year contract last time, which I think is fascinating. That's not something Liverpool would have typically wanted to do. I feel like, you know, from a negotiating position, it would have been far safer for them to agree 5, 6. We've seen them hand out 6-year contracts. I believe Darwin Núñez got one when he signed. So, you know, they would always prefer to be on the longer side of things. And yet Trent signed a 4-year contract, which suggests to me that was kind of came from his side. That influence is that they wanted to shorter contract to, if not get themselves into this situation where he's 6 months from the end, to at least get themselves where they were 18 months, and they can use the, you know, Real Madrid interest as leverage, or interest from all sorts of clubs, because why wouldn't they be interested in him? So that's kind of interesting that they've allowed it to get into this situation. But I do think the players' influence is big on that. And as you say, I think, you know, the leaving on a free thing is, I think Trent would get quite a lot of stick for that from fans. And that's something that Liverpool will be kind of disappointed by, because we know that they're so good at when they A, getting a good fee, and B, reinvesting it. So that's a disappointing thing. But I do think that's been partially engineered by the player. And I think a very, very smart move, by the way, that maybe some other players will look at and think, you know, if you can sign a kind of 3-4 year deal that brings you just up into kind of the brink of your peak, that gives you such negotiating power. Particularly when you have a club like Real Madrid interested in you. So I think it's a really fascinating one, actually.
Yeah, it is something I think we're seeing more and more of in football. I remember I got a question into Arsene Wenger at the Lawyers World Sports Awards a few years ago. I think it was maybe about Aaron Ramsey at that time, and he said this will happen more and more in the future. Players will run down their contracts and leave for free because, you know, more money in it for them, basically, rather than the club. So yeah, I mean, it would be gutting to lose him on a free transfer.